I learned while we were doing this that was Pete Seegar's house. It was his parents. The restaurant I would always go to was in the home that Pete and his wife lived in with her parents in the 40s. Yeah, it was. So it's a lot of that was very alive for me. But
wow, full circle a little bit there.
Yeah, yeah.
Where have you been, my blue-eyed son? Here I am in the recording studio. It's meant to look like where Bob Dylan played. It's pretty rad. I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan. I'm a huge music fan. And I'm here to do interviews with a couple of people from the new film, A Complete Unknown. It's beautiful. It's lovely. The music rocks. I'm not going to play too much because I can't play that well. But keep watching. Some great interviews coming up.
I want to hear it.
How does it feel?
I remember as a kid listening to folk music, listening to Joan Baez, listening to Bob Dylan. What was your experience with this music that you are taking on here?
Some of the same. My parents, my mom had every Joan Baez and Judy Collins record, all the, that was her stuff. The Beatles too and everything, and Peter, Paul and Mary. And I think the first time I ever, even as a child, I think I was aware of Pete Seegar because I remember on the Peter, Paul and Mary records, when you looked on the back, If I Had a Hammer and Where Have All the Flowers Gone, it said Pete Seegar, I was like, oh, who's Pete Seegar? In your young way, you're going, oh, they didn't write this, someone else wrote this. And oh, Bob Dylan, that's who wrote, this one. And if you're a child of parents of the 60s, the odds are pretty high you had some exposure to these guys. And Dylan, I didn't really, he really activated for me when I was in college,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it was Blood on the Tracks, which I think is, it's really funny because people talk about Dylan's phases and there's so much in this movie about how at 65 he went electric. And it's like go listen to Blood on the Tracks. Like that's like years and years later, and it's one of the great acoustic like records of all time. You know what I mean? But I was pretty steeped in these years of the early 60s and his arrival in New York when I kind of moved to New York.
Oh, okay.
Because it was mythology.
Yeah.
Like it really felt like the mythology of Dylan arriving in New York. If you were arriving in New York and I was living in the Village and I'm walking, there was no way. I was very. I had a wild thing, which is I realized watching this documentary. I had a restaurant a place I used to go, after seeing downtown theater with a date or whatever, and I learned while we were doing this that was Pete Seegar's house. It was his parents. The restaurant I would always go to was in the home that Pete and his wife lived in with her parents in the 40s. Yeah, it was. So it's a lot of that was very alive for me. But
wow, full circle a little bit there.
Yeah. I which has its own burdens because in some ways, if you mythologize something too much, you can be like, oh, we should never touch this. It's it's too biblical. It's heretical to get at this stuff. But Jim Mangold was he's very wise. He's a great director, and I think he was very articulate about that you don't. There's plenty of documentaries, and that the thing to do was really that all he wanted to do was look at the messy collisions amongst these people that produced this wild moment, in culture and in music, very fertile moment that came out of these collisions.
Oh, for sure.
Between Dylan and all these other people.
Absolutely. I mean, the music feels so alive. And even your moment with Weemaway, that's such a beautiful moment. It feels, I don't see Edward. I see Pete.
That's good. Yeah, there's something about I will say that I watched it, even the lighting and things like Pete had a certain posture that Jim and I really tried to make sure we tried to get the essence of the way he he looked really distinctive on stage. You know, he was such a beanpole, and he had that he had that head thrown back way of singing. The thing about him, Weemaway is a really good example. Like, I think Pete Seegar made things look easy. He would, you know, he sang. Peter Yarrow told me he sang the song 3 times at the same time. He sang it, he taught it, and then he harmonized with it. And I never really, until we did Weemaway, I didn't really get fully what Peter Yarrow was talking about. And then I realized how hard, how he made things look easy that were in fact an incredibly hard choreography. And you know, you realize what these people were virtuosos. You know, they were playing guitars and it looked simple. You know, they were unadorned. They weren't with a band, but in some ways it's more impressive because they held the stage alone. You tramped all the way from Minnesota. Why is that?
I wanted to catch a spark.
How did you start? What was the building blocks of finding yourself in her shoes?
Well, I had no singing or guitar experience, really. So it was just diving in headfirst into the music and training. I mean, Jim told me that I was cast, and I celebrated for like 5 minutes and then ran and got my sister's guitar restrung so that I could start.
So you learned to play JoBlo. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, yeah.
What was it? I mean, what were your, you know, she's such an important part of the 60s. What was your, how did you react to her? Were you influenced by her at all in the beginning, or was it all new to you?
Well, so I grew up in the Bay Area, and I went to lovely public schools that had like gardens and arts programs, and we had a garden sing every year, and so we were singing songs that were like Woody Guthrie songs, like This Land Is Your Land, and I definitely knew of Joan, and I knew some of her / Bob's music, and so there was familiarity there, but I didn't know all of what she did as an activist, and I didn't have a really comprehensive understanding of her whole life until I started working on the film.
Wow. And she's still an activist.
She still is, yeah.
Yeah. What was it? I mean, this is such a beautiful film. The music it translates so beautifully into film, I believe. What was it like working with the director and kind of finding the mood? I mean, this just feels like an old movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, James Mangold is such an incredible director. I was so excited to have the opportunity to work with him. I would have worked with him on anything. And to have it be a movie about music after we all saw and love Walk the Line was just so exciting. And there's just heaps of trust there because, you know, he knows what he's doing. And same thing with Timothy Chalamet. I mean, he was an actor that I really, really admired. And knowing he was taking on Bob was really exciting. I felt like the casting was perfect, and also he's, you know, an artist who really takes hold of a project and gives it his all. And so, you know, it was really exciting, a little intimidating, to be honest, but exciting. I love when the bar is that high.
No, you guys work really well together.
Thank you.
What was it? I mean, how did you guys get a chance to rehearse, or did you just find that connection?
Our first rehearsals were music rehearsals, and Jim designed the schedule really intelligently and had us do scenes where we're more at odds in the beginning of the shooting schedule, and scene like the Blowin' in the Wind scene in the apartment that was the last scene that I filmed in the movie. And so even though it's not sort of sequential to the story, the process for us of getting to know each other was a natural one in terms of the intimacy of the scenes and how they sort of progressed in the schedule, which was really nice.
How about that Joan Baez, folks? Well, she's pretty. Sings pretty. Maybe a little too pretty.
Your songs are like an oil painting at the dentist's office.
You're kind of an asshole, Bob.
If you go with snowflake storm, when the river's freezing, summer in